The president's facing bipartisan criticism over his decision to pull American troops out of northern Syria. At issue are the Kurdish fighters that the U.S. will be abandoning. For years, they've been critical in helping the U.S. fight against ISIS, but Turkey views the Kurds as terrorists. And now the concern is that once the U.S. leaves, it'll clear the way for an unexpected Turkish military invasion against Kurdish forces. Here's how the president defended the move yesterday.
We're 7,000 miles away. These ISIS people, whatever you want to call them, these people are right there. They're right there. They're touching many of these countries that I just named. Iran, as an example, hates ISIS, and ISIS hates Iran. Iraq, you know all about that. Turkey, Syria, let them take care of it. Let them take care of it. We want to bring our troops back home. It's been many, many years. It's been decades in many cases. We want to bring our troops back home. And I got elected on that. If you go back and look at our speeches, I would say we want to bring our troops back home from these endless wars.
Well, for more on the drawdown in Syria, I want to bring in Amy Austin Holmes. She's a fellow at the Wilson Center's Middle East program, and she's actually traveled to Syria to meet and speak with members of the Syrian Democratic Forces to survey them. So, Amy, first tell us how you were actually able to get access to even conduct this survey.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I was able to visit Syria numerous times, actually, since 2015. This year alone, I spent over 2 months there. I was in Syria in February, March, and in July. I was there in March when they declared that the caliphate, the territorial caliphate, was officially defeated. And, I applied for permission to cross the border through Iraqi Kurdistan into northeast Syria, and I visited all of the 6 provinces of northeast Syria that are under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces. I was not able to visit Afrin, which is the 7th province that the self-administration previously also had control of, but now that's currently occupied by Turkish-backed groups.
So who makes up the SDF, and what's been their role in fighting ISIS?
So the Syrian Democratic Forces are often referred to in the American media or by pundits as Kurdish forces, sometimes even just as Kurds. But actually, they're a multi-ethnic force. The majority of the rank-and-file fighters are now actually Arabs, and that's because as the SDF conquered more territory, as they liberated cities from the Islamic State, they conquered, major Arab population centers like Raqqa and Jidazor, and so they incorporated Arabs into the rank and file. There's also a Christian component of the SDF, which is organized in the Syriac Military Council, and they actually live very close to the border of Turkey. Most of the Christian minority, the Syriac, Assyrian, and Chaldean Christians, live right across the border from Turkey, like 1 mile from the border, 2 miles from the border in the northeastern corner. There's also a small Turkmen minority that are members of the SDF, as well as a small number of Yazidis who have joined. So it's Kurds, Arabs, Turkmen, Yazidis, and Christians who make up the Syrian Democratic Forces. And so we need to start, talking about them in that way. It's not just a Kurdish force. Originally, it was, they did grow out of the YPG and the YPJ that were a Kurdish-led group. However, now it's a multi-ethnic force that is, that defeated the Islamic State and that is in control of 1/3 of Syria now.
Kurdish fighters told CBS News this withdrawal feels like a stab in the back. How does the SDF view the U.S. coalition? How long would they want the U.S. to stay in Syria?
So this is one of the questions that I asked on my survey, because many, analysts talk about the SDF, but they don't, actually talk to them. And I conducted this survey because I wanted their voices to be heard. And, to my surprise, the vast majority of respondents, 92.5%, said they want the U.S.-led coalition to stay in Syria. Only 7.5% said they wanted the U.S. to withdraw. So there's an overwhelming, majority of the SDF who want the U.S. to remain in Syria. I also asked a question as to, if they want the U.S.-led coalition to remain in Syria, then for how long? Here, their answers were, most of them said they want the U.S. to remain until stability is achieved. And that it's, that's not the case yet, obviously. I mean, the caliphate was just officially declared defeated in March, but there are still sleeper cells. ISIS has essentially, transformed into an insurgency. The SDF is holding thousands of ISIS detainees in the Al-Hol camp. They are able to spread the ideology, ISIS ideology inside this camp. And so the ideology is not defeated, the insurgency is not defeated, and the sleeper cells are not defeated. This is why,
there's also, I'm sorry to interrupt, there's also been some concern about Russia potentially moving in to fill this void. How much of a concern is that for the forces on the ground there?
Well, it's definitely a concern because the regime in Damascus is supported by Russia and Iran. And if the U.S. actually does leave, the SDF would really have no other choice than to ask for help or protection from the regime, which means asking for help from Russia. However, it's important to remember that Afrin, the province that I just mentioned in the northwest, that's also right across the border to Turkey, that used to be under the control of, that was sort of the Russian sphere. That was the de-escalation zone that the U.S. had agreed with Russia. And so Russia actually allowed Turkey to intervene in Afrin, which is what led to the occupation of Afrin. And so the Kurds and the SDF felt very betrayed by Russia when this happened back in early 2018. And I'm afraid now, the United States, we're making the same mistake, and we're doing the exact same thing that the Russians did in 2018 when Putin gave a green light to Turkey and allowed Turkey to come in and invade Afrin. And, I'd like to think that we as Americans are better than the Russians, that we would stand by our allies, that we would not give a green light for a Turkish intervention to happen. Erdogan has made no secret of what he wants to do. He wants to, he's also saying that he wants to deport millions of Syrian refugees that are now in Turkey, that he wants to deport them into this so-called safe zone that he's calling along the border. That would mean taking predominantly Syrian Arab refugees in Turkey and forcefully deporting them, which is illegal, into northern Syria, which is predominantly a Kurdish region. So he would be placing Syrian Arabs in a Kurdish region of the north, which is really like another version of the Ba'athist, pan-Arab Arabization policies that happened in the 1960s under the regime of, Hafez al-Assad, and even prior to that, when the regime was trying to break up and fragment the Kurdish region in the north by placing Arabs there, by displacing Arabs to that region.
It is certainly a complicated factor there on the ground. And so much going on there. Amy, I want to thank you for your insight and your perspective. Amy, Austin Holmes, thank you for joining us, Amy.